it, but on the other hand, this class is very much about like diving into a novel and like taking it apart. And so I also very much value the notes that people take as well as the work in those packets. So that's a little bit of reasoning behind the final. Yeah.
I don't have that thing.
Okay. Probably now's not the time, but you can maybe, yeah, we'll have to talk about that later. But let's get started. Yes.
Did you say we could take it home like the first thing, or we're not doing that anymore?
Take home.
Yeah, the draft you said we could work on it home, and the next thing we type.
Yeah, I'm not collecting anything until Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. All right, so let's open up to page 78. We're just going to do a quick review. So page 78, we just want to, just as a quick reminder, we want to remember who our narrator is. It's Nick Carraway. He's unreliable. He's full of opinions. Even at the end, like we talked about yesterday, he gives this scathing judgment of, you're a rotten, they're all a rotten crowd, right? I'm trying to remember what page. He says, you're a rotten, they're all a rotten crowd, you're better than the rest of them. And so it's like a very clear image that he is not objective.
It's in chapter 8.
Yeah, I had it marked here. Oh, page 154. They're a rotten crowd. You're worth the whole damn bunch put together. So as, before we start our review, just like remember, he's not objective. So page 78. Yesterday we talked about how like Nick is really enamored with Gatsby, and he says, the modesty of the demand shook me. He waited 5 years and bought a mansion where he dispensed starlight to casual moths so that he could come over some afternoon to a stranger's garden. And he has this very romanticized image of Gatsby himself, like 5 years of working endlessly to get out of the lower class and become some wealthy businessman just so he could invite this girl over for an afternoon. That's like pretty romantic, and in Nick's eyes, like Gatsby can do no wrong. If we fast forward to page 84, we have this further description of Gatsby, and I think this plays into kind of the symbolism of Gatsby. It's how he's dressed. He's dressed in a white flannel suit, a silver shirt, and a gold-colored tie. And so I think, much like yesterday, we really talked about how Gatsby, he doesn't really know how the upper class works, right? He is bragging about his adventures throughout Europe, which, if you're really upper class, you don't brag about that. He's taking out a gold medallion from working in the army. He's taking out a photograph to prove that he went to Oxford. He's saying old sport, like, he doesn't know all the, he's not in, right? He's not in the in crowd. And so even the way he dresses, like, does anyone here own a white suit?
Or a pink suit?
No, you're raising your hand. Yeah, a white flannel suit, like you just don't wear. Do you own a white suit? I think I've seen you wear one.
You wear all white.
No, I wore all white.
Yeah. They're all white with that baby blue that he always wears.
I had all white.
That's his favorite. That's his favorite suit.
With that black.
So
It's nice.
And that baby blue. That baby
I would
blue.
say, right, the combination of these, the combination of Gatsby's colors, of like a white. Does everyone know what flannel is?
Sure.
No.
Flannel, we know, you know what a flannel shirt is? It's like, it looks like the wood chopper guy, like, they look like forest men.
Oh, yeah. The cholos.
So it's,
Wow.
so it's a
Top
thick
button only.
material. So flannel keeps you warm. This is the middle of a hot New York summer. He's in a white flannel suit with a silver shirt and a gold tie. In the movie, they make him look good, but like it's an odd combination, right?
Yeah.
All right. So that's page 84. And so white, like he's trying to give this appearance of something, of like wealth and purity, but it just doesn't match. If you fast forward to page 92, again, with the same theme of shirts, yesterday we talked about this passage, right? She's crying. She's saying what beautiful shirts they are. And at the very bottom of page 92, we see that that green light is now covered in mist. What did that mean? The green light is covered in mist. So who is or what is the green light?
Back when
Daisy.
Daisy, that was his dream, we're trying to
His
get her,
dream.
so now that it's close to her screen, it's floated
He
in the
can't
mist.
have
That's
Like
what
you
it
can't
is.
have it.
So this is a really interesting point in that Daisy, in some interpretations, can be the love of his life, but it also, she might just be an object to add to his collection, as is seen on page 93, which, that last line, it says, his count of enchanted objects had diminished by one. So, I'm pretty sure no lady in here would like to be called an object, right?
Nope.
An object denotes control, ownership. Nobody wants to be owned. Nobody wants to be told what to do as if they don't have human emotions, right? And so here it almost speaks to the fact that Gatsby viewed her almost as like a trophy to add to his collection of objects to prove to people, right? Similar to that car ride. Here's my gold medallion. Here's the picture I went to Oxford to prove that he's owed money, right? And so this mist is kind of telling us, the reader, that his goal is being obscured. It is being, there's some hindrance in the way. And it connects back to the point where Daisy's crying, right? Why is she crying? She misses him. And there's almost a tinge of regret, right? Like, she married Tom and she had a kid with him. And so in this moment, Gatsby realizes that there is an obstruction to him getting Daisy, right? There's been another life lived in the past 5 years that hasn't had to do with Gatsby. Which then brings us to the point, in the following chapter, what does Gatsby want Daisy to do?
Leave Tom.
Not just leave Tom,
Tell her that
but
you never loved her.
tell him that she never loved him, right? And so the fact that that becomes a requirement or a need for Gatsby proves to us what about Gatsby? What does he kind of believe? If you're dating someone and you're like, you need to tell that person you never loved them, what kind of insecurity do you have? That maybe that person loved him, right? And so if they can profess it, otherwise, then that like subsides your fears, right? And so for Gatsby, he realizes that she still has, that maybe she loved him, right? But here, already on page 92, he realizes that he can't get Daisy, and it just gets worse from there. If we go to it, also on page 93, yesterday we talked about I tumbled short of his dreams. Oh, page 95, excuse me. So if we go to page 95, we see that Daisy tumbled short of his dreams, not through her own fault, but because of the colossal. What does colossal mean? Big, vitality. If I say, what are your vital signs? What am I asking for? Yeah. So vitality means what? Full of light. Of his illusion, not illusion. What is illusion? It's a dream. So Daisy fell short of his dreams. It wasn't her fault, but because of what?
Gatsby.
They were so big. They were like beyond life. It had gone beyond her, beyond everything. He threw himself into it with a creative passion, adding to it all the time, decking it out, almost like you would a car, right? Like he's dreaming and he's like, yeah, I want this and this and this, and it gets larger and larger and larger. Every bright feather that drifted away, no amount of fire or freshness can challenge what a man will store up in his ghostly heart. So I think that's a really interesting phrase that we talked about yesterday, right? Ghostly heart. There's another point towards the end of the book. We'll come across it, I forget what page it is now, but ghostly is mentioned again. All right. If we go to page 105. Is it page 105? Yeah. Well, right before that, on page 98, yesterday we saw that he is, yesterday we saw that, right? He comes from his parents, they're shiftless and unsuccessful farm people, but he views himself as a son of God, right? And then, so he's like this, we just saw, right, that he has these grandeur dreams. And then his own view of himself is, does he have a very humble view of himself? If you call yourself, yeah, I'm pretty much like a god. What do you have much humility? No. So with that into view, let's go to the bottom of page 105. So, it's not okay, page 109, excuse me. So with this as kind of the lens for us to view Gatsby and how he views himself, at the bottom of 109, we find out that Gatsby wants Daisy to say to Tom, I never loved you. And then if we continue on to 110, or the bottom of 109, it says, she doesn't understand. She used to be able to understand. We'd sit for hours, right? So he's reminiscing about the past. He broke off and began to walk up and down a desolate path of fruit rinds and discarded favors and crushed flowers. I wouldn't ask too much of her, I ventured. You can't repeat the past. Right, so what does Nick tell Gatsby?
You can't repeat the past.
No, he's like trying to like relive his early 20s of when he was in love with this girl. Can you repeat the past?
No.
I think it's people grow and develop and you have your life experiences. You can't make things as they were before. What is Gatsby's response? Can't repeat the past, he cried incredulously. What? Of course you can. And so this introduces to us a paradox, right? Someone who wants to live in the past yet create a present and a future with somebody, right? It's not possible. How can you live in the past while also trying to pursue a future? And so to this end, when this is at a contrast, when the past and the future are fighting each other, what is the destiny of that person? Death, right? A person can't live in contradiction. A person eventually, right, there's no place for him. All right. He looked around him wildly as if the past were lurking here in the shadow of his house, just out reach of his hand. I'm gonna fix everything just the way it was before, he said, nodding determinedly. She'll see. He talked a lot about the past, and I gathered that he wanted to recover something. What did he want to recover? Some idea of himself, perhaps, that had gone into loving Daisy. And so, when you love a person, you give part of your heart to that person, right? You have to be vulnerable. To be in love is to be vulnerable. And Gatsby, right, fell in love with Daisy. But when he fell in love, something of him was taken, and something was broken. And so part of the reason he wants to go repeat the past is to find out like what was taken from him, because love is unexplainable. And so in many ways this is a very great romance, right? He doesn't know why his heart hurts so much, and he's going back to try to figure it out. His life had been confused and disordered since then, but if he could once return to a certain starting place and go over it all slowly, he could find out what that thing was. Then we have an ellipsis, which is a flashback to 1917.
Yeah.
One autumn night, 5 years before, they had been walking down the street when the leaves were falling. And they came to a place where there were no trees and the sidewalk was white with moonlight. They stopped here and turned toward each other. Now it was a cool night with that mysterious excitement in which it comes as the two changes of the year. The quiet lights in the houses were humming out into the darkness. And there was a stir and bustle among the stars. Out of the corner of his eye, Gatsby saw that the blocks of the sidewalks really formed a ladder and mounted to a secret place above the trees. Now this is a beautiful sentence. Out of the corner, so it says the blocks of the sidewalks formed a ladder. So it's Nick and Daisy, they're like right here, right? And then you have this street, it's like a sidewalk. And then you have the trees at the end and the moon. And so from this vantage point, it looks like a ladder, right? Leading to the heavens, leading to the skies, right? And so he realizes, like, that's where he wants to. He's a son of God. He's great. It says he could climb to it if what? If he climbed alone. He could reach his dreams if he was alone. And once there, he could suck on the pap of life. The pap of life is like the core, the sweetest part of like fruit, right? He could gain the most out of life. Gulp down the incomparable milk of wonder, right? The wonder that nothing can compare with. But the one requirement is he can achieve those dreams if what? He's alone. His heart beat faster and faster as Daisy's white face came up to his own. He knew that when he kissed this girl and forever wed his unutterable visions to her perishable breath, this mind would never romp again like the mind of God. So in this moment, she's coming in to kiss him. What does he realize? Once he kisses her, he has to give away part of himself, which means not being able to achieve his full dream. So what did he do? He waited, listening for a moment longer to the tuning fork that had been struck upon the star. So he has to make a decision. What does he decide? Then he kissed her. All right, let's take a break.
Guess what? That's what about this one.
Es que necesito que cancelen.
Can you do that? I forgot how to do it.
Oh, you need to.
Good afternoon, Kid Northeast. The event for this afternoon for BBS has been canceled. I repeat, the event for BBS has been canceled for this afternoon due to the severe weather.
I don't think there's attention because I'm not going. No, pues no dieron nada. And the list is from Tuesday, I think.
Yeah,
Whatever.
but BBS was canceled, right? Actually, they provided 1 year. That's it. Actually, they provided one for 1 year. That's it.
And then what happened?
I didn't want to go back.
Oh, you
I knew it
did?
was a big mistake. Yeah, but I was like what, 8?
Get a you? Oh. No hay.
Yes, there is.
Oh shit, there is. For real?
Glad they canceled BBS.
Right.
Because I have something else to do and I have signed in